Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? So, my name is Dania Hakim. I'm the program director for Hawaii Center for Food Safety. Before we get into too much content, I just want to give you a little rundown of the agenda for today. I'll give a quick introduction, as I am right now, and then Nicole Brody and Autumn Ness will be presenting on two different elements of canvassing. And then we'll do a 10-minute Q&A and wrap up. So just to give you a little background on Hawaii Center for Food Safety, we're a national nonprofit advocacy organization. We've been working on sustainable food and agriculture issues in Hawaii for about 10 years, providing legal, policy, scientific resources to the people on the ground organizing for a more sustainable food system. And this year we're working on state level elections, issue education, voter registration, and we're currently recruiting volunteers to help us. So if you're interested in getting involved in that, you can visit our Action Fund website, which is listed at the bottom of this slide, or you can go to our Facebook page at Hawaii Center for Food Safety Action Fund. This is the second year that we've been hosting these virtual trainings, and we do them on all sorts of topics. We like to gather organizers, community members throughout the state, providing all various types of content, anything you're interested in. So we'll be sending a follow-up survey after this training. If you have any ideas for training topics you'd like to hear, please reach out to us. Please fill out the survey. We're open and want to provide whatever interests the community. Shifting into the GoToWebinar system, just to give you a little sense, you have some tools available to you. Currently, you're in listen-only mode, so it allows for our presenters to speak without all the background noise of everybody involved. If you look on the upper right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a control panel. As participants, you can ask questions throughout the presentation in the little chat window, the question window. So if you have questions, please ask them, write them in the window, and I'll do my best to be monitoring those questions. If they're simple and easy, I will respond to them. If they're for the presenters, then we'll address them in the Q&A session later on during the webinar. If at any point you have trouble, you can raise your hand. There's a little hand button next to your name, and we'll see that and we'll reach out to you via chat. So if you have any other questions, anything, you can just write in that little chat window and I will respond. So the other thing I should mention is we are recording this webinar and we will send it to you afterwards. So you'll have a copy of that. You can send it to anyone else you think might be interested but couldn't join today. So we'll be recording it. We'll also be putting it on YouTube. So with that, I want to introduce our speakers. Nicole Brody will be first from Kanu, Hawaii. She's the executive director. She's been with the organization starting as a volunteer since 2012. And Kanu is a wonderful nonprofit. They work on a variety of important issues, local food, energy. She'll be talking more about it. And she'll tell us more about how we can get involved. And then our second presenter is Autumn Ness. She's the founder and director of Maui United, a grassroots organization, focuses its efforts on also promoting local food, sustainable ag, and preventing the harms of toxic pesticides on human and environmental health. So both are incredibly experienced community organizers and have done quite a bit of canvassing. I know Autumn personally knocked on 3,000 doors last election season, 2014. So looking forward to hearing from both of them on their tricks of the trade this afternoon. So with that, I'll pass it off to Nicole.
Great.
Nicole, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So just a quick overview of who Kanu Hawaii is. We strive to build a more sustainable, compassionate, and resilient Hawaii. And while our issue areas are around food sustainability, waste reduction, energy independence, and civic engagement, we try to do that in a way that provides the biggest umbrella for everyone in the state. So we end up not taking too many policy positions, but rather providing avenues for people to make changes in their daily lives if they're interested in one of these areas and making a difference by changing their own behavior. So our idea is that sustainability is rooted in personal commitments to change. So we start with ourselves first, and then we come together as a community and see what we can do together collectively. And we think that civic engagement is a key component to that. So in 2012, we were able to, Dana, can you advance the slide? We spoke to community. We reached out to thousands of voters around Oahu and around the state. We had 50 volunteers, and we made a really big difference in low voter turnout communities. And the people that we spoke to ended up voting at about 87%. So we registered people, and 87% of them actually voted, which is huge. So we found that just asking people to vote makes a really big difference. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, is the importance of asking people to vote. And just to connect this to sustainability, we feel like an engaged populace is essential to a resilient population. Like, in order to tackle issues that come up, people have to be engaged and be connected to each other in order to work together to solve upcoming problems. So we feel like voting and this type of civic engagement is just a necessary part of a sustainable community. So for this year, in 2016, we're going to be doing a lot of what we did in 2012. So we're going to be registering voters. We're going to be asking people in the community what issues matter to them, what they care about. And then we also have a voter education component, which I'll try not to talk too much about, but I do just want to quickly say it's a candidate game where you can see the anonymized answers of your candidates and decide which answer to the questions resonates most with you. And at the end, it will tell you which candidate you agree with on the policy issues. So without knowing names or faces, you're able to decide, we're able to inform you on where they stand on these issues, and you can kind of come up with an informed decision on who you most agree with for policy. And so we're going to try to do that for the primary as well as the general election. So we're working hard on creating that. And then, of course, the last component is getting people to actually vote. And so one way that we are going to do that is encourage people to sign up for permanent absentee ballots, so their ballots get mailed to their homes. And we found that, once the ballot is in your house, a lot of the excuses about not knowing where your polling place is, or not going in time, or the presidential election is already decided by the time you vote, a lot of these excuses no longer exist, and it makes it very convenient and easy to vote. And so just in general, we think that voting matters, because if we don't vote, then we tend not to count to legislators. They're supposed to be representing everyone in their district, but they tend to just represent the people who control their jobs, namely the voters. So we've actually heard stories that if a legislator has to choose between their constituents and their voters, they will decide on the side of the voters. So even if that's not the majority of people living in their district, if the voters want something, then that's what they'll go with. So we found that there's just a lot of power in being one of those voters, that you do get listened to. And we just want as many people, we want constituents and voters to be as equivalent as possible. And in that way, voter engagement and advocacy work together. So if there's issues that you care about and you talk to your legislator about them, and you say that you're a voter, you have a bunch of other voters who also care about this, then they're more likely to listen to you and to do the work that you want them to. And so in that way, it's a necessary first step in the fight to take back our government from moneyed interests. And one thing that we've heard is that people in Hawaii don't care, and that has not been our experience. So when we went to speak to communities, we asked people, things that they cared about, and this is what we heard in the various communities we spoke with on Oahu. So Kaneohe, Waianae, Manoa, and Kailua, they all have different things that they care about. You can see there's a lot of similarities across, but they care. They're paying attention. There are things that matter to them. And you can also see that a lot of these things are local issues. So when it comes to the presidential race, the issues that they're talking about aren't really here. Like education is a statewide issue, rail is a county issue, traffic is a county issue. So these are really local things that people care about. And so that's why it also says think local. These are local issues, but people definitely care. Apathy is not the problem, and so I don't think that voting is necessarily an indication of people not caring. And so then for this election, We have a lot of local races. So here's just kind of a breakdown of who is up for election in the different counties and across the state, to remind us that there's a lot more going on this election than the presidential, right? There's all of these different races and seats being decided right here in Hawaii. Yeah, so next slide. Okay, so in registering people matters. So I think there are a lot of people who have never been asked to vote, and that makes all the difference. It's like the #1 reason why people vote is because they were asked to. And so our role of people who are canvassing, who are getting out in communities and asking people is massive. It's huge. Like, this makes the difference. This is why people vote. And so it's extremely important that we do that. And I mean, we might encounter people who have their reasons for not voting, and that's fine. People have that, and I wouldn't recommend necessarily getting into a debate and a discussion about the merits of voting. I would just make sure that we're reaching as many people as possible who are interested in voting and just haven't been asked and don't know how to go about it. There's plenty and plenty of those people, and so that is our job, is to find as many of those people as we can, make it as easy as possible for them so that they can get engaged in our system. And we are so lucky that in Hawaii, every year it seems that the Office of Elections is making it easier and easier for people to vote. So now, as long as you have a Hawaii driver's license, you can register online. You don't even have to fill out one of those paper forms and fill it and send it in. You can just go straight to their website and register. You can also, like I said, you can vote from the comfort of your home. You can sign up to have a ballot mailed to your home address every single election. So even if you didn't know it was an election year and there was something to vote on, the ballot just shows up at your house. And you're like, okay, well, now it's time to vote. And we also have early voting options where you can go to the polls a few days before. So we don't have just one election day. We have multiple election days at least on Oahu, Kapolei Hale and Honolulu Hale, and the other islands each have their own, most likely at City Hall, where they can go and register and where they can vote early. And we also have late registration. So same thing, you can go to those locations and you can register. So our state is working really hard to make it easy for people. And so again, it's our job to let people know how easy it is and to just put that information in their hands. And so also, I think the next slide is, just some dates that we want to keep in mind. So there's the vote early in person, so at the walk-in locations. There's voter registration deadlines, which, I mean, there's still like the late registration deadline, but in general, those are the voter reg deadlines for the primary and the general elections. And then most importantly, election day, the primary is Saturday, August 13th, and then the general election is November 8th. So I want to go just a little bit into talking about tabling. So that's where you set up a table at some hopefully big event where there's a lot of foot traffic, people walking by, and you have some signs that they can read. So this is an example in this picture of some big, beautiful signs that you're not likely to miss. And so we highly recommend that so people can just see exactly what you're offering. But then it's also important to talk to people. A lot of times at these events, people are just kind of meandering and they just want to look. But sometimes you just want to engage them with a question. And so we've found that a really good question to ask for tabling is, can I help you update your voter registration? And we found that that works better than, are you registered? Because if people don't want to answer questions with no, and they also don't want to answer a question that might be embarrassing to admit. We found that there's, some people don't really want to admit if they're not registered. So that's kind of a hard one to ask and expect an honest answer, particularly if the honest answer is no, and you get the drift. So can I help you update your voter registration is this really positive thing. You're asking, can I help you? And people don't want to say no to that. They want to say, yes, of course you can help me. And then update your voter registration, that might lead to a question of, well, why do I need to update it? What does that mean? And then you can go into, well, if you've moved since you last registered, or if you changed your name, or if you'd like to vote from home. All of those things can be done on the same form, and we can help people do all of those things. And I think that that's a really positive, sort of enticing, encouraging way to get people to come over. And you can see also on that slide, the follow-up is, have you moved since you last registered? And so like I was talking about, there's ways to follow up with that initial question of, can I help you update your voter registration? And we've also found that interesting signs. So some poster ideas. So we actually just tried this at an event last night. We had the vote naked. Um, but I think our sign said vote naked, sign up here. So it didn't even say vote from home, it just said vote naked. But it got people to laugh, it got people to look and to stop, and that's really what we wanted. We just wanted people to sort of engage. So if you do just have a sign on a table, you want to find some way to kind of break people's attention and get them to be like, wait, what? And that's really helpful. Like I said, if they're just kind of meandering around and they have sort of a slow pace, to get them to stop and think and laugh and engage. And that's a really good way to, like, once people start laughing, then you can start a conversation and ask them, can I help you update your registration? And of course, for people who are not registered, it's just a good way to say, well, I have never even registered. You say, perfect, I can help you do that right now. And like I said, we want to encourage people as much as possible to vote from home, because once that ballot shows up in their house, they're so much more likely to actually vote than if they have to figure out where their polling place is and go to it. So then for canvassing, I want to talk about tabling first, because I think it's an efficient way to talk to a lot of people. There's a lot of traffic, you get to talk to a lot of people in a short amount of time. So it's sort of efficient in that way, and it's a really good practice for talking to people about voter registration. But canvassing can be really impactful, to have that one-on-one experience at people's homes. It feels much more like the community building, community organizing activities I was talking about earlier, of what we really want to achieve, of making people feel closer and like they're a part of something. And so canvassing is much more effective at that. And engaging people in that way. So I highly encourage people to do that. Even I know that it can be really scary for people. I've done canvassing on a lot of different issues. I used to go door to door asking for money for an environmental organization that I worked for, and that was pretty hard to go door to door asking for money. And so in contrast, canvassing to register voters is a dream. I love it. I feel like I'm simply offering a service, a door-to-door service. This could not be easier. In the comfort of their home, they can register to vote, then their ballot's going to be mailed to their house. Like, it could not be easier for people. And I'm, making sure that they are registered if they want to be, and that they can vote if they want to, which just feels good. And so it's really this sort of non-confrontational thing, and it's I end up feeling really good doing it and making connections with people at the door. And so in this case, since you are knocking on their door, you want to say your name. You want to start with that. So I always say, I'm Nicole, and I'm always with someone else, so I introduce them as well, or they can say their own name. And then I say the organization that I'm with. And if you just happen to be an individual registering people, then the name should be sufficient. Or you might want to say, we're just individuals out here asking you and your neighbors if we can help you register or update your voter registration. So same thing, that type of question, you're just offering your help. And so you're not necessarily asking them a question or being too invasive. You're just saying what you're out there doing and asking them, if we can help you to update your voter registration. And then most likely they're going to say, what does that mean, or why do I have to update it? And then, again, it's if you've moved recently, if you've changed your name, or if you would like to vote from home, are the things that we are updating their registration for. And of course, if they're not registered in the first place, then helping them do that. And then, so as I talked about a little bit, I feel like this builds all types of skills, that going door-to-door experience. It's about listening to the community. It's understanding what issues matter to people and what barriers they may face. I know that when I went door-to-door and I talked to people, I got a different perspective on issues. Like, I thought it was so obvious, like, of course this is the right thing to do, and then you hear from other people and you're just like, it's really eye-opening. You're like, oh, I had no idea that that was the reality for people. I feel kind of differently on this issue. At least it's not as black and white as it used to be. So it can be just very broadening to hear other people's perspectives on things. So listening is a really key component to canvassing, especially if you want to be genuine and getting people engaged. And it also teaches you how to disagree respectfully. Sometimes people say things that I completely disagree with, and it does not change the way I feel about something. I still feel very strongly about it. You have to find, particularly as a representative of Kanu Hawaii, like I said, we try not to take policy issues stances, and so we don't want to alienate people, and I don't want to represent Kanu in a way that's, Kanu should not be represented. So it's really about how to acknowledge what the person is saying, understanding their viewpoint, and most likely moving on, and or expressing that you disagree with them, but finding a polite way to then move a conversation to something else, or encouraging them. Well, that's a really strong stance. I assume you're going to want to express that at the polls. Everyone has the right to vote. We want to encourage everyone to get involved. That's kind of the beauty of our democracy, is that diversity of voices. And then the ability to organize people, build and maintain relationships, and building skills to communicate to a mass audience. I mean, while it feels like you're just talking one-on-one, there's something sort of intimidating about knocking on someone's door. And once you do talk to them, you realize that you can talk to strangers, and you can build a rapport and a relationship with them quickly. And that skill is easily extrapolated to large groups, where you're standing in front of a group of people and able to make that connection and build that relationship, even if it's not on one-on-one. And so same thing, presentation skills and capturing people's interest, and maybe getting them to join what you're doing in terms of, if they're interested in going around their neighborhood and registering more people, then that would be a really great thing to do, is to offer them that chance. So I think canvassing is really exciting, even though it might be a little intimidating at first. I really think everyone should try it at least once. Pretty much everyone I've spoken to was afraid to do it their first time, and then once they did, they realized how much they liked it and just how happy they were that they did it. And I still get butterflies pretty much every time I'm about to knock on that first door. But once I do, I realize these are just people. We're just having conversations about important things, and it ends up being empowering and kind of inspiring. I tend to really like it. And I've had some really fun experiences. I went one time and I was wearing a No Vote, No Grumble t-shirt, and I was asking this woman if she would register to vote, and she said she had no interest in it. And as I was walking away, she's like, but where do I get one of those t-shirts? And I was like, the t-shirt says No Vote, No Grumble, but you want one? And she said yes. I was like, okay, if you register to vote, next time I come back, I will get you a t-shirt. And so she did. And perhaps and so we had this arrangement that, like, if you sort of have to live what the shirt says, right? You have to actually vote in order to not get the right to grumble. And so we developed a relationship, and she was so stoked when I came back and gave her the shirt. And she not only registered to vote, but she convinced other people in her household to register to vote. So I think there is also some switch about the idea of what voting means. So it was, you can have these really fun experiences out there. And so I also just want to kind of go into the nitty-gritty of some of the questions that you're going to face as you go out and talk to people. So here's a slide of a sample primary ballot. So this is an important one because people can only vote for one party in the primary. They don't have to be registered with any party in advance. You can vote for whatever party you want to. You just have to be consistent throughout the ballot. So if you mark on that top left-hand side that you are part of the Green Party, then you're only allowed to vote for Green Party candidates. Same thing with any other party. That's how that works, is you are restricted to voting for their candidates. And so that's just some information that people might need as you're registering them. If they ask how the primary ballot works, that's just something to be aware of. So people, if they ask, how do I register for a party, they actually have to go through their party headquarters in order to do that. But ultimately, it doesn't matter, because you can still vote in the primary for whatever party that you want to. You don't have to be pre-registered in any party. And then, most importantly, this is what the registration form looks like. I just want to kind of give people a heads up if you haven't seen one. So there's Social Security number, date of birth, and telephone number is useful because if there's something wrong with the registration form, then the Office of Elections will call people for clarification. So I would encourage people to fill out the phone number to make sure that they get registered appropriately, just in case there is something wrong with the form. And then there's different addresses. So there's a residential address. So that's basically like the district that you're registering in. Your mailing address is where you would get the ballot mailed to. So let's say your P.O. box is in a different district than where you live. You want to register where you live, and then your P.O. box will just be where you pick up the ballot or whatever else gets sent to you. And then line 7 is for those people who don't have a residential address. So, for example, someone who's homeless, they can register there by saying, I live on the corner of Hotel and Bishop Street. And that will be their address, and the Office of Elections can determine their district. So it's really important to know that you don't have to have a residential address in order to be able to vote. So Kanu also works to register homeless people. We feel like that is a population that tends not to have very powerful voice in government, and we want to change that. And so we want to show that this is a population that votes. And while we understand that they have a lot of other things to worry about, again, it's for those people who want to get involved. We want it easy for them as possible. So that would be where line 7 comes in. And sorry, this slide is a little blurry. So you'll see it once you actually see a voter registration form. And so number 9 is an email address. That's optional. Number 10 is, are you registered in another state? And so it's helpful to just list the state that you've previously registered in. And then the voter registration box, where it says, I'm a citizen of the US, I'm 16 years of age, resident of the state of Hawaii, all of those boxes need to be checked. That line needs to be signed and dated. This is a very important portion, that if it's not filled out, then someone is not registered to vote. And to be a resident of Hawaii, you just have to live here for a month, have lived here for 1 month, and feel like this is your home. So we tend to encourage students who maybe are, from out of state and going to UH Manoa or HPU, and we encourage them to register in Hawaii because this is where they spend most of their time. And also, if they're students for 2 years, for 4 years, that's about the same time that their legislators are in office. And so we feel like they should be in control of their lives for the time that they're here by voting for people that are going to be affecting their lives for the time that they're here. So it just makes sense that, so like I said, we encourage people to register in Hawaii. Of course, if they don't want to, they prefer to register back home, then we allow for that as well. And I think they have to have a whole other registration form. This is simply how to register people in Hawaii. And then the permanent absentee, all they need to do is sign and date that, and that's it. They will get their ballot mailed right to their home. And they can vote naked, they can vote in a prom dress, they can do whatever they want. It's super easy, and so we really encourage that because most likely they will vote if they've registered as a permanent absentee. And just a quick thing, I just want to let people know that as long as you're a U.S. citizen, it doesn't matter what state you live in, you can register in Hawaii. Like I said, if you're a student or whatever, you can register to vote in Hawaii as long as you've lived in the state for a month. And it's also important to know that people born in American Samoa, Guam, and Puerto Rico are U.S. citizens, so the same rules apply to them. It's the same thing if they were born in Florida or California or wherever. But unfortunately, Micronesia and Marshall Islands are not U.S. citizens, so they would not be able to register to vote here in Hawaii. And so we found a question that people ask, especially when you're asking people, is your voter registration updated, or can I help you update your voter registration? People ask, how do I know if I'm registered? And so these are the 3 ways that they can know. They most likely or hopefully received a yellow card in the mail that has their voter notification on it after they registered. Same way, you can check online as long as you have a Hawaii driver's license. You can go to the Office of Elections and check your registration status, and you can change your address, you can change your permanent absentee ballot, you can do all that stuff right online, or you can call the clerk's office at the below numbers. So we found that this is the most common questions, that's why I wanted to make a slide with the possible answers to that question. And you're definitely going to encounter a lot of other questions, and I'm not going to go through all the possible answers today, but I wanted to at least provide the source. So the Office of Elections website is really, really helpful, and these are some places where you can go. They have election day information, online voter registration, just basic voter registration, voting by mail, and even more fact sheets than that. So they have really great resources that if you have a team of people, you can print out for them to have access to, or at least just show them where on the website they can find all the answers to these questions. And with smartphones, sometimes you're able to provide these questions right at the door or at a table if someone asks something and you really want to be able to give them the right answer. This is a really great place to go and check that out. And then for Kanu, we actually, so I actually thought that I was giving this webinar yesterday, so anyway. We have an event tonight, in person, Thursday the 23rd, in person at training. It's basically going to be this with a little more detail at the Manoa Innovation Center. On Saturday, we have the Honolulu Mini Maker Fair. We're going to be tabling there. And then also there's a sustainability fair on Sunday where we're also going to be tabling. And like I said, if you want that experience of talking to people, of going around with a clipboard and helping people update their voter registration, it's a really good experience. So I think that's about it. My coworker Darcy is on the call as well. Hopefully she can fill in anything that I might have missed. But otherwise, I think we'll turn it over. All right. Well, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Autumn, if you want to jump on, I will get your slide ready to go.
Okay, hi everybody. Thanks, Nicole. That was I learned a couple of new things actually too from that presentation, so thank you. I wanted to just spend a few minutes, not too long, going over like some lessons that I learned last election cycle about canvassing, because like Dania said, I'm on Maui, and we ran a really hard ground campaign that really focused on door-to-door voter education in the last election, and we learned some hard lessons, and we also learned some funny lessons that I wanted to share with you guys. I became a really big fan of going door to door. Like Nicole said, I was really nervous about it in the beginning, but once I started going, when the election was over, I was like, oh, I'm not knocking on doors anymore. It became a really cool way to meet people in my community, especially on an island. So a couple things we learned about canvassing is the choice of what neighborhoods you go to is a really big deal, and for a couple different things. Density is obviously, we're looking for numbers, right? So neighborhoods where houses are close together just increases your numbers. Not so much if you're going to like more ag central places where houses are really far apart and it takes you 10 minutes to walk from house to house. They're not ideal neighborhoods. Accessibility, for example, dogs and fences are a really big deal. Some neighborhoods, unfortunately, were the demographics and the location that we wanted to talk to, but most of their houses were fenced and had really loud dogs. And it just became like we would spend 10 or 20 minutes and we would only get to, you know, one out of 10 or 15 houses because we like physically were unable to get to the front door. So in neighborhoods like that, it just makes more sense from what I found to throw in the towel and go somewhere else. Unless you have something that you can leave on their fence with a rubber band or a clip or something. If you are canvassing on issues, when I first started out, I went to the hardest neighborhoods first, the neighborhoods that I thought were going to need the most amount of education or coercion or swaying, and I realized that it was a kind of a waste of our time because we were spending 15 minutes at each door and no one would agree with us. We were doing the GMO moratorium, and there's a very big plantation central vote in central Maui, so we decided to start there. And we realized in the end that that was, again, a waste of our time because we weren't talking to people who were friendly to our cause at all. So we decided to change our focus to a neighborhood that was more mixed. So we were talking to people who weren't with us a lot, but also people who were kind of on the fence. And it's a lot easier to kind of sway someone or educate them about the issue if they're on the fence than if they're totally against what you're trying to bring to them. So we really, as we got closer to the election, we started focusing more on areas of the island that were in the middle and found that numbers-wise, that really helped us gather votes. And, you know, sometimes things just are not going your way. You have what you think is going to be a good neighborhood, you have a good team, and it's not working, you know? Your response is not great. For some reason, nobody's home. And we just, you know, know when to quit is my biggest advice. When you're not having a great response, throw in the towel, go to the beach, and try again tomorrow. And that really kind of helped keep us sane until the election. Let's see, I think you can go to the next slide, Danya. So like Nicole said, you don't need to give a big speech about yourself, but it is nice for the person at the door to know who you are and why they should trust you. In our situation last year, just a name, and if we live in the same neighborhood or if you live near them, that's great. And a little bit about why you're doing it in like one sentence really helps to kind of build rapport for the person at the door. And a lot of our volunteers, including myself, were kind of shy about knocking on someone's door, because I get a lot like, I don't want to bother someone when they're at their house. What if they're sitting down to eat? This is their time after work, and then a stranger's coming to their door. And I fully understand that, and that's where I came from in the beginning as well. But I quickly realized that most people, if you present yourself in an open way, um, they really want to talk to you. Like Nicole said, you're offering a service, and the people get kind of fed up with politics and with elections, because their only experience with politics and issues and elections and candidates are through the media, and it's really removed and cold, and they never know who to trust, because everyone knows that the media is not super honest, and the only ads they see are bought and paid for by the candidates themselves. So you are this real person that lives in their community. You're not the media machine, and you can answer questions, and they can read you if they trust you or not. So most people are really welcoming. Last year, the GMO moratorium on Maui was really contentious, and I was really nervous to bring that to people's houses. And it turned out that not all, but for the most part, even people that were on the other side of the issue as I was, were really grateful to have a real person to ask questions to. So if you go into it with that mindset that you're actually doing a service, like Nicole said, I think it's really helpful. And you do get questions. People are excited to see a person at the door where they've been wondering something for a long time and they never knew who to ask, so they'll ask you. And not only is that good for them, but it's really good market research for you. Whether you're canvassing on an issue or on behalf of a candidate, I made notes about a lot of the questions that people would ask me, and I would bring them back to our other volunteers, and we could kind of get a read about where public perception was going as the election came closer, and as ads are on TV, the ads that are on TV are changing, and we would get different questions the next day. So we actually used our door-to-door canvassing to steer our other, I guess, areas of education, whether it was mailers or sign wavings. Like it was like clockwork. A new ad would come on TV, and a couple times I would knock on someone's door, and they would open the door, and they're actually watching that ad on TV as I'm standing in front of the door. And they would ask me about something that they heard in the ad, and I realized, oh, wow, we have to get these answers out to the wider public. So I would call our team of people who were doing sign wavings on the side of the road and tell them, these are the questions people have, and they would make signs addressing those questions, and they'd be standing on the side of a busy highway the next day. So by me talking to a few people at their door, we were able to get that information out to the wider public in different ways too. Yeah, like I said, it's great market research. Like you can't buy that kind of stuff. It's really organic and immediate and honest research for your candidate or your issues. And if I were to tell you that every door was a good door, I would be lying. I think Nicole can vouch for that too. Some people are just not, friendly. And they just don't want to talk to you, and that's fine. And some people are not really very polite about telling you that. So what I did realize is that every once in a while you'll get a bad apple, and they'll tell you to F off or get out of my yard. But just like clockwork, the universe will send you a great door right after that. For every bad experience I had, which there were few, not many, I ended up the next house or the house after would like invite me in and give me water, and we'd talk story for a minute. Or the next house after that, I would knock on the door, and the person who answered is someone I knew from the beach. So it all evens out, and the good experiences are like 100 times more than the bad experiences. So yeah, just take the bad things with a grain of salt. I don't know if I'm supposed to go to the next slide or not, Tanya, but Yeah, okay, we covered this one already with the market research. We can maybe go to the next one, unless that's it. A couple things with the questions and answers that you get. You don't have to be an expert on everything to knock on doors about an issue or a candidate. It's actually, I think, pretty comforting to hear some. If they ask you a question, you say, I don't really know what the answer to that question is, but here's how you can find out. You can give them the number of the candidate that you're canvassing for, or the number of a group that's helping with the issue or the website, or take down their phone number and get the answer for them later. And it's really, I think, a way to build trust instead of trying to make up your answer or feel like you present yourself that you know something more than you don't. Yeah, it's okay to say that you don't know if someone answers a question. And I think I just want to end with two more things. Elections are a numbers game, right? So whether you're canvassing for an issue or a candidate, it's all about, or just to get out the vote, you want numbers. So like I said, pick your neighborhood well. Don't get discouraged if you have a couple bad apples, because in the end you're going to have more good than bad. And really, last election cycle, we were working on an issue. Like I said, it was the GMO moratorium, but we were outspent something like $8 million on the other side to $200,000 on our side. And any election expert across the country will tell you that there is no way we should have won that election. But we didn't try to play a money game with the other side. We were grassroots organizations, just regular people, and the only way we could compete with money in media, money in mailers, and advertising and stuff like that was on the grassroots level with numbers, face-to-face, door-to-door numbers. And when you're doing a new candidate, versus a well-known candidate, or an issue that has a lot of money on the opposite side of you, door-to-door canvassing is really one of the only ways I can think of to compete cheaply on a grassroots level in a way that wins. Because the people who you talk to at the door are going to be super stoked that someone came to their door, first of all, and they're going to talk about it at work and to their family and to their friends, and every door that you talk to is at least one vote, and probably more, because that's the way island politics works. So is people talking the story with each other. So it's super effective and really fun. And I guess the last thing I want to say, besides, is that it's fun and a great way to get out into your community. It's been 2 years almost since the last election, and still regularly I run into people that say, hey, you're that girl that knocked on my door and talked about the GMO moratorium. Hey, I never voted before. Or, hey, that was the first time I ever talked to my family about an election or something, and I'm really stoked about it. So the impacts of what you do will last a very, very long time, and it's cool, especially living in a small community where we all know each other and we see each other at the beach. It's cool to have that connection with people about something that matters on a deeper level besides just how the weather is. So yeah, do it. It's scary in the beginning, but it's really fun quickly afterwards. So go for it. And I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Autumn. I appreciate it. So I wanted to open it up to questions. If you guys have questions, please feel free to write them out in the question window on the control panel. I had one quick question. Wanted to better understand how it would work. Like, if I want to canvass, how long do I canvass for? How much time commitment is expected of me? Can I just come out for one afternoon, or do I become part of this big team that goes out every weekend? And that can be for either one. I know it depends on what you're canvassing for, but just want to give people an understanding of what would be expected.
Nicole, you want to answer that first, and then I'll chime in at the end, maybe?
Sure, yeah, that works. So we usually choose, so for us, we targeted low voter turnout districts, and so we looked at the neighborhood as a whole and chose specific streets within that neighborhood, and then we broke it up what we thought a reasonable time was. So we just counted how many houses, and I forget, I mean, it really depends how many to get through in an hour, but I think probably I don't know, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 houses in an hour is about what to expect. And we would say to go out for 2 hours, especially in Hawaii's heat. It can be a little hard to go out for more than that. Um, and you also want to choose the time that you go pretty well. So we would go on weekends when people are more likely to be home. Because if you're knocking on doors in the middle of the workday, you're gonna just, no one's gonna be home. It's just not a smart thing to do. And so we look at weekends or in the evening time. Um, we would go maybe from like 4:30 to 6:30, or sometimes a little later, like 5 to 7 if it's still light out. I mean, you don't want to go in the dark either because that just makes you a hazard. But so you have to think about all of these things, right? Like when are people likely to be home? You also want to make sure that you bring water and comfortable shoes, that you're hydrated and that you stay comfortable. Wear a hat, bring sunscreen, because you are ultimately outside for most of the, I mean, for all of the time. We most likely encourage people not to go inside. You don't want to be rude. We also want to assess the situation. We want to make sure that our canvassers are always safe. But I think in terms of planning what areas, I mean, most likely you want to say, okay, we're going to do this whole neighborhood, and you figure out how you're going to break it up and what streets, who's going to do what. But we were able to assign different people to different streets, and they, you know, we gave them a week to do it. So whenever the two people on the team, whenever their schedules matched and they were able to go, then they did, and that street got done. We got the results, and we got to say, you know, what happened at each house. But then at the end, we got to look at the whole neighborhood, you know, that whole community, and say, okay, wow, we reached this many streets and this many homes and talked to this many people and registered this many voters. And so it's always good to kind of be organized about it and to kind of bring those numbers together at the end so that you can really see what you've accomplished as a team.
Great. Autumn, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I guess everything about what Nicole said is totally true, depending on, you know, the kind of campaign you're running. In our case, we were a little bit different because we were so many different grassroots organizations and just regular people we put a call out to just start canvassing, and we had kind of like what Nicole was talking about. We had a well-organized team where we would go in certain neighborhoods, and we had coordinated pamphlets and stuff like that. And in that case, exactly what Nicole said, we had goals and we had numbers at the end of the day. And then we realized, too, that there were people that were just printing flyers off of the website and taking them to their street. And they didn't know if there were voters that lived there. They weren't reporting their numbers, but they would hit, you know, 20, 30 houses on their Sunday afternoon and call it a day. And that would be the only street they ever canvassed. So I think both of those ways of canvassing are really, really important for different ways. The people who only canvassed their street on a Sunday afternoon probably won't sign up to do 2 or 3 days a week for 4 months, you know, but the street that they did was really, really important. So I think it's good for a lot of campaigns to kind of encourage both of those kinds of canvassing. We also had the warriors who were out doing 4 hours a day for, you know, 4 or 5 days a week like it was their job. I think it's whatever you feel comfortable with doing, how far outside of your neighborhood or your comfort zone or how much time you have to give to it. I think they're both really, really important, both of those styles.
Great, thank you both. So what about if you kind of know about an issue? I know you kind of mentioned this, Autumn, but you don't maybe have as much comfortability with an issue, so you're hesitant to knock on doors. Can you talk to that? And if not an issue, just voter registration in general, you just don't feel super confident about what to say. Do you often get a script or like frequently asked questions kind of document so that you can bounce back and forth with people? What would you encourage people to do?
I would say the frequently asked questions thing is a really good idea. If you have an organization or a central group that's working really hard on an issue, they'll usually have something like that, or, you know, talking points sheet or something like that. And if you can, it's really helpful to go with someone else, even if it's just for a few houses. Just see how they bring it up and how they approach certain questions or how they even start the conversation. That can be a real confidence booster. And a lot of times, if you care about an issue, I think you probably know more than you think. But you just have to be reminded that you know more than you think. So those frequently asked questions sheets are a good idea. And like, you know, having a pamphlet of an organization that's working on the issue that you can give to the person and say, hey, if you want more information, I'm just Autumn, but if you want information, call these guys and they can answer your questions. I think that works pretty good.
Yeah, and for Kanu, we always have a before we send people out onto knock on doors. We want to make sure that they feel comfortable with the process, with the forms. And I mean, obviously there's going to be lots of technical questions. There's plenty of things that I don't know about the voter registration process just because there are so many ins and outs. And so we don't expect everyone to know everything, but you know, you just want to be sort of informed as you go out there. And so we provide people with the frequently asked questions, and we go over the voter reg form very carefully. So we make sure that people are trained and feel ready to do it. And sometimes role play is really helpful, where people, you know, like someone pretends that they're the door and someone pretends that they're the canvasser, just to kind of experience what that's like, even if it's like a very sort of mini level. It can be helpful to have that conversation and see how that conversation plays out. So that type of training and interaction can be really useful before sending people out to canvass on their own.
Great. Thank you both. Anything else you would like to add? Anything that came up that you forgot to say? Okay, great. Well, Autumn, anything you want to add?
No, I think that's good. Nicole's done a great job. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I just wanted I just wanted to thank you both. We're all just thanking each other for sharing with us today. It was really helpful. It's going to be a really helpful tool moving forward. Just want to let everyone know that we'll be sending a audio recording of today's webinar with a brief survey tomorrow. So if you wouldn't mind filling out the surveys, letting us know if you have any ideas for future trainings or discussions, that would be really appreciated. And you can always reach out to me at the email below. Let me know if you have any questions. And yeah, we'll be posting this training online as well on YouTube. So on YouTube, and it'll come in through your email. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.